The box wasn't supposed to be opened. Not here. Not now. Not in the forgotten storage room of a hotel where staff tossed umbrellas, half-broken suitcases, and coats that no one ever claimed. But when the night bellman pried it open out of boredom, what he found stunned him into silence. Medals none of the staff could name. Insignias not from any war they remembered, and a folded letter sealed with the insignia of a general whose name carried echoes across continents. A letter that ended with two words scrawled in urgent ink: Cipher Hawk. If you believe that the quietest people in your life may be carrying the heaviest secrets, make sure to like and subscribe, because this story will remind you that sometimes the ones who fade into the background are the very ones who once stood between chaos and survival. Her name was Elena Torres, and at 28 she seemed to everyone like just another receptionist stuck in a nowhere job. The kind of woman who looked perpetually tired but polite, who wore a slightly oversized blazer to hide the fact that she never quite filled out her uniform, who pressed her hair back into a tidy bun even though stray strands kept falling over her temple like she had given up fighting them hours ago. To the guests who wandered into the lobby, she was background noise. Good evening. May I see your ID? Here's your keycard. Breakfast is at 7. Nobody thought twice about her. Nobody guessed she had once gone nights without sleep listening to coded transmissions from insurgent groups in the Middle East, translating languages she had no time to learn but was forced to understand, pulling apart numbers and ciphers that carried life or death in their patterns. They didn't know that at 21 she had been given a call sign, Cipher Hawk, not because she was the loudest or the bravest, but because her mind could lock onto codes the way a hawk locks onto prey, dissecting what seemed meaningless into something precise, actionable, and terrifyingly accurate. She didn't tell her co-workers at the hotel about the nights she sat in a cramped, unmarked building overseas, headphones pressed against her ears, while voices spat coordinates that aligned with friendly units on the move. She didn't tell them about the one convoy she couldn't save, the voices she translated too late, the men who never came back because she was human, because she blinked when she shouldn't have. To her coworkers, Elena was just 28 and stuck. A nice girl who took too many night shifts. A quiet type who never went out for drinks after work. They teased her sometimes for being overly serious about checking IDs, but they didn't know that muscle memory never fades, that once you've been trained to verify, confirm, and cross-check identities, you never stop. They didn't see how her eyes flicked to every guest's hands first, checking for nervous tics, rings that didn't match the story on their registration card, or how her shoulders subtly shifted when someone loitered in the lobby too long, as if positioning herself between them and the families heading toward the elevators. They didn't see the way she scanned the exits, rehearsing in her head which guest she'd move first if something went wrong. Elena wanted to bury that part of herself, but it leaked out in small, unnoticeable ways, like the way her fingers sometimes hesitated on the keyboard, typing passwords with a rhythm far more complex than a hotel check-in required, or how she stared too long at static from the old TV in the staff lounge, as if she were still waiting for a hidden message to reveal itself. At 28, she should have been carefree, maybe finishing grad school or dating or traveling, but instead she was living behind a counter, performing scripts for travelers who never learned her name, fighting ghosts that crept into her dreams, where every knock at the door could still mean something had gone wrong in the field. She told herself she liked the hotel job. It was easy, predictable. The guests came and went. Nobody expected her to save lives. Nobody called her by her old name. But deep down, Elena knew she wasn't hiding from the world. She was hiding from herself. And yet, the world has a way of finding those who think they've disappeared. That night started like every other. Fluorescent lobby lights humming, the faint smell of lemon polish on the front desk, a couple with cranky kids dragging suitcases across the marble floor. Elena smiled faintly, checked their ID, handed over a keycard, offered the line she always offered: breakfast is from 7 to 10, pool's on the second floor, and returned to her screen. To them, she was nothing more than another face they would forget by morning. But as the family shuffled away, Elena's eyes caught something in the glass doors, a reflection, a man in a gray suit entering with a stride too purposeful, eyes locked straight on her. Most guests scanned the lobby first, orienting themselves, but this man's gaze was unflinching, aimed only at her. She felt her stomach tighten the way it used to in briefing rooms when someone walked in with classified orders. She pushed the thought down. She was just Elena Torres, 28, receptionist. Cipher Hawk was dead. Still, when he reached the counter, the air around her seemed to shift, and though he hadn't yet spoken, she felt as though the world she'd built, the thin civilian mask she wore every day, was about to be torn apart. But before that moment arrives, before the words that would freeze her blood in her veins and drag her back into the life she had buried, you need to understand who Elena truly was. She wasn't a hero in her own eyes. She wasn't the flawless operator movies glamorize. She was a girl from a working-class family who signed up at 20 because she wanted purpose, because she thought the army would give her a way out of small-town invisibility. Instead, it gave her a call sign, a stack of classified commendations she couldn't show anyone, and nightmares that left her sitting awake until dawn staring at walls that wouldn't answer her. When she was 24, a general had leaned across a table, handed her a letter, and told her she had saved more lives than she would ever know. But she never believed it. She only remembered the convoy she missed. She only remembered the screams in a language she couldn't translate fast enough. That's why she left at 26. That's why she hid behind hotel counters. Because Elena Torres didn't want to be Cipher Hawk anymore. And yet, on this night, fate decided Cipher Hawk wasn't done. The man in the gray suit stopped in front of her, his shadow stretching across the counter, and Elena felt the weight of recognition in his eyes before he even opened his mouth. The hum of the lobby lights seemed louder. The sound of a luggage cart rolling across the tiles faded. For a single suspended second, the entire world held its breath, because the past was about to come crashing back through the glass doors of an ordinary hotel lobby. The man didn't fumble for words the way guests usually did when they asked for directions or late checkouts. His voice cut clean, low, carrying an authority that pierced through the hum of lobby lights and the soft clatter of a luggage cart vanishing toward the elevators. And when he spoke her name, he didn't say Elena Torres the way everyone else did. He said it with a weight that felt like a command. And then, almost too softly for anyone else to notice, he whispered the words that shattered the life she had built. Cipher Hawk. Secure channel. Now. Elena's breath caught. Her fingers instinctively tightened on the counter, and in that instant her world tilted, because those two words weren't supposed to exist here. Not in this quiet hotel, not in her civilian life, not after she had fought so hard to bury them under fluorescent lights and room service requests. Her coworkers didn't look up, the guests flipping through brochures didn't notice, but inside her, alarms that had been dormant for years screamed awake. She stared at the man, his suit neat but unremarkable, his face bland in the way operatives often were, designed to blend in anywhere. But his eyes carried the sharpness of someone who had spent too many years studying people, searching for weakness, reading their truths in milliseconds. "You've got the wrong person," Elena managed to say, though her voice sounded brittle, almost unconvincing even to herself. But the man only shook his head once, firmly, the way commanders did when there was no time for games. "Cipher Hawk, we don't have time for denials. There's been a breach." The words coiled around her like a noose. Breach. She hadn't heard that term outside classified walls, and hearing it here, in a hotel lobby with a family laughing in the corner and the smell of coffee drifting from the lounge, felt obscene, wrong, like two worlds colliding that were never meant to meet. Her heart slammed in her chest as she searched his face for answers, but he leaned closer, lowering his tone until it was meant for her alone. "Keys you worked with, streams you handled, they've resurfaced. Someone's selling fragments on the black market. You're the only one who can confirm the patterns. We need you." Elena's throat dried. She wanted to laugh, to scream, to tell him that Cipher Hawk was dead, that she was Elena Torres, 28, hotel receptionist, a woman who filed complaints about broken vending machines, not someone who dealt with encrypted streams that could topple missions. But beneath the denial, truth pressed hard, because part of her had always known the past wasn't done with her. That's why she still slept with the letter under her mattress, why she still scanned exits without realizing it, why she sometimes dreamed in codes instead of words. And yet, she shook her head again, trying to fight it. "I'm out. I signed off. 2 years ago." The man's jaw tightened. "You can't sign off from something that still has your fingerprints all over it. This isn't optional." And just like that, The walls of her fragile civilian life began to crack. She glanced at the family in the corner, the kids begging their father for a late-night swim, and a wave of nausea hit her because this world, this safe, mundane world, was already being tainted by the shadows she thought she'd left. "Why me?" she whispered, the words almost lost under the hum of the air conditioner. "You've got analysts, entire teams. Why drag me back?" His answer was sharp, immediate, because no one saw the sequences like you did. No one else understood the fail-safes. You don't just read codes, you brief them. And if these fragments fall into the wrong hands, we're looking at more than compromised operations. We're looking at lives. Hawk. The call sign struck her again like a blow. Hawk. She remembered the first time it was spoken in the field, the weight of it, how proud she'd felt, how scared, too. Now it felt like chains being welded back around her wrists. "I can't," she said, but her voice betrayed her, because beneath the protest, part of her already knew she would. She couldn't walk away, not if lives were truly at risk, not if her skills could mean the difference between survival and another convoy being erased because she wasn't there. Still, she tried to fight. She thought about her parents, who believed she was working a normal job, about the co-workers who joked she was too serious, about the fragile life she had built brick by brick to keep herself from drowning in memories. "I'm not that person anymore," she whispered. But the man didn't flinch. "You never stopped being that person. You just put her in a box." The words hit harder than he probably intended, because immediately Elena saw it. The storage room box, the medals, the letter sealed by a general, her name written in ink that she had sworn she'd never let define her again. She imagined the bellman staring at them in shock, not knowing he was holding proof of a life none of them ever suspected. A bitter laugh almost escaped her, because fate had already set the stage long before this man walked in. Her secrets weren't safe anymore. She wasn't safe anymore. Cipher Hawk had been pulled back into the open, and there was no running. The investigator's tone softened slightly, almost like he recognized the storm ripping through her. "You don't have to come back for good. Just this. One confirmation. Help us stop this breach, and then you walk away. No strings." Elena knew better. There were always strings. Once you re-entered that world, even for a moment, it clung to you like smoke, impossible to wash off. But she also knew herself, and she knew she couldn't live with the guilt of ignoring the call if lives were lost because of it. Her hands trembled against the counter. She felt 22 again, signing on to her first mission, scared but resolute. She hated that this man, this stranger, could still reach into her chest and drag that girl back to the surface. Around them, the lobby carried on in blissful ignorance. A guest complained about slow Wi-Fi. The night clerk behind her hummed quietly while sorting receipts. And Elena stood on the edge of two worlds colliding, the life she wanted and the life she couldn't escape. Finally, she nodded, barely, the smallest tilt of her head. The man's eyes hardened with acknowledgement. "Good. We'll move to secure channel in 10. Don't draw attention." Then he stepped back, blending into the lobby like any other businessman waiting for service, leaving Elena with her heart hammering and her reflection staring back at her from the glossy counter surface. For 2 years, she had convinced herself Cipher Hawk was gone. Tonight, she realized the truth. Cipher Hawk had only been sleeping, waiting, and now she was awake again. Elena's hands were still trembling 10 minutes later when she found herself in the staff lounge, the gray-suited investigator across from her, the old flickering TV muted, and the faint smell of stale coffee lingering in the air. And though the room looked the same as it always did, with worn chairs and half-empty sugar packets on the counter, for her it had transformed into something else entirely. A debriefing chamber, a battlefield of memory, the kind of place where the weight of words could topple entire lives. And as he opened a slim black case on the table and slid a tablet toward her, she knew the moment she touched it, Elena Torres would vanish and Cipher Hawk would return. The screen glowed with fragments of code, half-broken sequences, lines of numbers scattered like puzzle pieces across a shattered floor. And though she had told herself she had walked away from this world, her eyes betrayed her, scanning, parsing, recognizing patterns that no one else would have seen. Hidden redundancies, staggered digits that resembled her old failsafes. The ghost of her own mind staring back at her after 2 years of silence. "These shouldn't be here," she muttered before she could stop herself, and the investigator leaned in, his voice low. Exactly. Someone's trying to rebuild the old streams. If they finish the pattern, they'll unlock access to coordinates that were buried for a reason: sites, operations, identities. We traced it back to a broker in Eastern Europe, but he doesn't know what he has yet. We need confirmation before we act. We need you. Elena's chest tightened as her fingers hovered over the screen, memories slamming back, long nights decoding chatter while operators waited for her signal, the crushing silence after a missed cue, the letter from the general telling her she had saved lives even as she felt only the weight of the one she hadn't. She wanted to push the tablet away, to say no, to walk back into the lobby and hand out spare toothbrushes to late-arriving guests. But the truth was undeniable. She was the only one who could see it. Cipher Hawk hadn't died. She had only been waiting for the world to call her back. For hours, she worked in silence, her fingers moving with a precision she thought she'd lost, reconstructing fragments, testing redundancies, unearthing the trap she herself had buried years ago. It wasn't just random leaks. Someone had found her old encryption patterns, the ones she designed to protect classified channels, and they were unraveling them piece by piece. Only someone on the inside could have known how to start. Betrayal, she realized, pulsed through the fragments. Someone she once trusted. The investigator's eyes never left her, watching as exhaustion etched lines into her face, as old instincts sharpened her posture, as the quiet hotel receptionist transformed back into the analyst who once carried battlefields on her shoulders. And when finally she pushed the tablet back, her voice cracked with the weight of what she had uncovered. It's compromised. Entire streams. If they finish this sequence, they'll expose identities still active. The words hung heavy in the stale air. The man's jaw tightened. Then you understand why we needed Cipher Hawk. She nodded, reluctantly, because the truth had cornered her. She was Cipher Hawk, whether she wanted to be or not. But she also felt something else stirring, something she hadn't expected, a spark of purpose, the reminder of why she had once endured endless nights of codes and static. For years she had told herself she was done, but seeing lives again balanced on the edge of her choices reminded her that maybe her story wasn't over. Still, she hesitated. You said this was one time, she whispered, her voice thin. In and out. Then I go back. The man studied her with an expression she couldn't read. Sympathy, maybe, or pity, or simply recognition. That's up to you, Hawk. But the truth is, people like you don't just fade out. You're too rare, too necessary. You can try to hide behind hotel counters, but sooner or later, the world finds you. His words cut deep because she knew they were true, yet she also knew she couldn't survive if she let herself be consumed by that world again. She had to find a balance, a way to carry Cipher Hawk without letting Cipher Hawk consume Elena Torres. Dawn was breaking by the time the investigator packed up his case, leaving her alone in the lounge, her body heavy with exhaustion, her mind buzzing with codes and ghosts. She sat there staring at the muted TV, the static dancing on the screen, and for the first time in 2 years, she didn't look away. Because now she understood, Cipher Hawk wasn't a burden she could erase. She was a part of her, a shadow stitched into her bones. The only choice Elena had was how to live with her. When she finally stepped back into the lobby, the morning shift had arrived, chatting casually, sipping coffee, oblivious to the storm that had raged behind the lounge door. Elena smiled faintly, handing off the keys, answering questions, blending once more into the rhythm of ordinary life. To anyone watching, she was still just the quiet receptionist in a too-big blazer, stapling receipts and wishing guests a good day. But inside, she carried the knowledge of what she had done that night, the code she had stopped, the lives she had once again protected without anyone ever knowing her name. And when she later returned to her small apartment, pulling out the letter from under her mattress, the one signed by the general years ago, she finally let herself read it without bitterness. You saved more lives than you'll ever know. For the first time, she believed it. Elena Torres was 28, a hotel receptionist. Cipher Hawk was a call sign buried in classified files. But both lived inside her, and both would always answer when the world needed them.